happened in the last 70 years, and people are ashamed to be a part of India at that point of time, then who is saying it on a foreign soil? So this kind of a confrontation to meme will carry on between the BJP and the Congress. As of now, the BJP, of course, we know is in power at the center. Nationalism has always been a wicket on which the BJP has attacked the Congress party. So the entire comments of Rahul Gandhi.
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight, we have news from Pakistan. Apart from the fact that it's broke and trying to arrest its former Prime Minister, Pakistan has once again been recruited as the dirty works department of the West. It is supplying ammunition to Ukraine. We have details of the transfers and the deals that have been signed. European powers that love to lecture the rest of the world on upholding democratic values and fighting an aggressor like Russia seems to have no issues in doing business with a terror state. What's worse, they keep releasing one-sided reports. The latest one is from the US. It says India armed Afghans, specifically the Warlords. Now, this is the same America that left military supplies worth billions of dollars with the Taliban. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping presided over his rubber stamp parliament in China. His deputies talk of stability, but the president has other plans. We'll tell you what he's up to. Also on the show, Pablo Escobar's cocaine hippos are coming to India. We'll tell you why. Half the world will be overweight or obese in a decade, and Japan fears that at this rate, the country will disappear. We'll explain the headlines first. Russian forces close in on Bakhmut. Their defense minister visits the destroyed city of Mariupol. Amid the offensive, Russia introduces virtual reality controlled boomerang drones to add to its firepower in the skies. Taiwan is on high alert. The defense minister says they fear a sudden incursion by the Chinese military, and this warning comes amid rising military tensions in the Taiwan Strait. South Korea's controversial plan to mend ties with Japan. Seoul will compensate victims enslaved by Japanese companies during the Second World War. The move has drawn backlash. Koreans want direct compensation from Tokyo. Clashes in Greece over the train collision that left more than 50 people dead. The Prime Minister has asked the Supreme Court to lead the probe. It's the worst rail disaster in the country's modern history. And universities in Afghanistan reopen after the winter break, but no women inside. The Taliban have banned women from attending universities. You know what they say about history? Those who don't learn from it are condemned to repeat it. Tonight, we'll show you how the West refuses to learn, how despite mounting evidence, it partners with Pakistan to fight wars. They're making the same mistake they did in Afghanistan. Europe has found a military ally in a terror state, and it's showing no compunctions whatsoever. Tonight, we expose their military transfers and secret pacts with Pakistan. Sample this. The war in Ukraine has created two power blocks. America, Europe and Ukraine on one side, Russia and China on the other. And where is Pakistan? Pakistan is playing both the sides. Pakistan gets military support from the US. It also gets money from China. And now, even as it struggles to make ends meet, Pakistan has found a new role for itself. The role of an ammunition supplier to Ukraine. A deal has been struck. It's a three-way pact, primarily for ammunition. And this is how it works. The United Kingdom will reportedly pay Pakistan, and Pakistan will supply ammo via Germany. In fact, this is an old arrangement. We've told you about this in the past. What is new is the expanding role of Pakistan in the war in Ukraine. The West is repeating an old mistake. It is partnering with Pakistan to fight another war. Let me start with the London-Islamabad Defence Pact. The UK's Defence Ministry is the driving force behind this. Why did they need such a pact? Two reasons. One, Ukraine needs more Soviet-era supplies. You see, most of Kiev's inventory is Soviet-era, and Pakistan knows how to make those munitions. So Pakistan is a natural fit. Reason number two, the shortages. And this is a well-known fact. Europe is scrambling to arm Ukraine. Supplies are running out, and Western production is failing to meet the demand. So every available source is being tapped. This is where Pakistan comes in. It is now a regular supplier to Ukraine. Let me tell you about a recent transfer. It was an ammunition consignment. 162 containers were sent to Ukraine. This included some artillery rockets. They were shipped from the Karachi port to Germany, specifically the German port of Emden. From there, the consignment was sent to Ukraine. The name of the vessel was MV Jurist. Earlier, an air bridge was used. A British Air Force plane flew to Rawalpindi. It landed at the Noor Khan Air Base. It picked up supplies and then transferred them to Ukraine. Later, some videos emerged. They confirmed the presence of Pakistani artillery in Ukraine. Take a look at this.
Короче, теж тільки гроші трутиш. А це теж бананова маска.
Да.
Клас.
Молоко.
До школи собралася.
А я, кстати, в школу тоже.
So Pakistan has proved itself to be useful. And now it's about to get a bigger role. Pakistan is getting newer clients. The United Kingdom is just one of them. Poland, too, is getting supplies from Pakistan. Reports say a Polish company has signed a pact, a memorandum of understanding. It is with an Islamabad-based firm. The name is DMI Associates. It is believed to have links with Pakistan ordnance factories. What are ordnance factories? They make military weapons and ammunition. So Pakistan Ordnance Factories manufactures military goods, and DMI Associates is believed to be the seller. They work together. What is Poland getting from this arrangement? We've not been able to confirm it yet, but going by one claim, Pakistan has already exported one consignment, a weapon, the Anza Mark II man-portable air defense systems. Again, this consignment allegedly went to Ukraine. It also involved a Canadian company. It worked as an intermediary. The Canadians basically coordinated between Pakistan's DMI Associates and Poland. The Polish government has not spoken about this arrangement yet. There is no official comment, no confirmation, perhaps because of the highly sensitive nature of these transfers. You see, a military transfer of any kind could tip the scales in this war. For Europe, this is about saving Ukraine and punishing Russia. But partnering with Pakistan is the worst possible strategy. Pakistan is a bona fide terror state. With about 150 blacklisted terrorists and entities, they're either based in Pakistan or they have links with the country. And I'm not the one saying this. This is the assessment of the United Nations, 150 terror groups or entities. Should Europe buy military supplies from a terror state? Should Ukraine accept munitions from a terror state? So much for upholding democracy, we say. The moral lectures were always hollow, but not learning from history can be costly. Consider what happened in Afghanistan. I'm talking about Operation Cyclone. It began in 1979, ended in 2001. What was Operation Cyclone? America's secret mission to arm the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. The Soviet Union had invaded Afghanistan. The local fighters were struggling, so the US decided to arm them. Guess who served as the intermediary then? Pakistan. Pakistan transported the weapons to the Mujahideen in Afghanistan. The Soviets were defeated, but two new demons were born, the Taliban and the Al-Qaeda, led by Osama bin Laden. We all know how it played out with the 9/11 terror attack and America's 2-decade-long war in Afghanistan, all thanks to Pakistan's double game. Islamabad pretended to be Washington's ally, but ended up supporting the terrorists too. The Americans were played, and now their allies are making the same mistake. They're trusting a terror state. And now let's talk about Pakistan's iron brother, China. Chinese lawmakers are meeting in Beijing. The National People's Congress is underway. It is the annual meeting of the Chinese parliament. After the meeting, they held a press conference. Do you know what they said? This meeting will advance democracy in China.
Whole process people's democracy is a major concept proposed by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, based on a profound understanding of the laws that underline China's democracy. It is the defining feature of socialist democracy in China.
Yes, your mind is not playing tricks. China just called itself a democracy. It's anything but. And this National People's Congress, it's a rubber stamp parliament. It is like a fixed cricket match. Whatever Xi Jinping decides, the parliament ratifies, no questions asked. So why should we bother with a meeting at all? Because the proposals here give an insight into Xi Jinping's mind. What is he thinking? What are his priorities? Who is on his target? And which direction will China take? In the next few minutes, we'll try and answer some of these questions, starting with Xi Jinping himself. He remains the supreme leader. There is no challenge to his authority in China. He locked his extension last year, and at this session, it was made official, that extension. No objections to his team either. Like I said, the Chinese parliament is a rubber stamp, so the appointments will go through. What will be their top priority? Stability. The outgoing premier made it clear. Li Keqiang delivered his last speech as Prime Minister of China. He spelled out the Chinese government's priorities. Guess how many times he uttered the word stability? 33 times. It's a record under Xi Jinping. No one has spoken about stability so many times. It's also a message, and the reasons are obvious. The Chinese state and its policies are increasingly unpredictable. Look at the flip-flops on zero COVID, the sudden crackdowns, and the party diktats that are hurting the Chinese economy. So Li Keqiang tried to restore some confidence, because this year China wants to revive its economy. It has set a new target. China wants its GDP to grow at 5%.
The main projected targets for development this year are as follows: GDP growth of around 5%, around 12 million new urban jobs, surveyed urban unemployment rate of around 5.5%.
5%. It's a modest target, and Li doesn't have to worry about achieving it. He's on his way out, but the president remains. He is pushing a new set of policies, and this could lead to more unpredictability. Several institutions in China are being reshaped. Beijing is tightening control on key bodies, especially in areas like finance, science, and technology. The goal is to centralize power. Loyalists are being installed in senior positions, and all of this only helps Xi Jinping and his grip on power. In fact, this has been the trend for a while. In 2018, term limits were abolished, so he could remain in office beyond 2 terms. In 2020, Beijing went after Hong Kong. It pushed the controversial national security law. We all know what happened next. Pro-democracy protests were crushed, and key figures faced a crackdown. Next year, in 2021, Beijing took full control of Hong Kong. It overhauled the political system and adopted new laws. They declared that only patriots can govern Hong Kong. And who are these patriots? Communist Party loyalists. So with every proposal, Xi Jinping has only made himself more powerful, and he's not shy of wielding that power. In the months ahead, he's expected to double down. The target will be Taiwan. China has vowed to take Taiwan back.
We should persist in implementing our party's overall policy for the new era on resolving the Taiwan question, firmly adhere to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, and firmly take resolute steps to oppose Taiwan independence and promote reunification. We should promote the peaceful development of cross-strait relations and advance the process of the motherland's peaceful reunification. Compatriots on both sides of the Taiwan Strait are one family bound by blood. We should advance economic and cultural exchanges and cooperation.
Frankly, nothing new there. China says it wants peaceful reunification. At the same time, it doesn't rule out an armed conflict. In fact, it is preparing for one. China wants to hike its military budget. The PLA will get a whopping $225 billion this year. It's a hike of 7% from last year, 2022. A 7% hike. Now, for a quick comparison, the US defense budget for 2023 is $858 billion, $858 billion. So with $225 billion, China is not the biggest spender. America's defense budget is almost 4 times. What about India? India's defense budget this year is $52.8 billion. So in this case, China's budget is 4 times more than India's. Why does the PLA need so much money? Premier Li gave an explanation. Let me quote from what he said. External attempts to suppress and contain China are escalating. The armed forces should intensify military training and preparedness across the board. Basically, China wants to prepare for war, and Taiwan sees this as a threat. Today, Taipei issued a warning. It said China is stepping up its military buildup.
其实大陆上的动态，我们一直很注意啊。它军费增加，不光是今年啊，历年来都在增加。
没有错，都增加，没有错。
但今年它特别强势化的话，我觉得它是要在准备当中。
准备什么？
准备将来如果一旦有必要的话，该要动武，它也会动武的。
是。
And Taiwan is not alone. From the South China Sea to the border with India, China is intensifying military activities across the board. And none of it is surprising, but that doesn't make it less concerning. Xi Jinping is set to rule China at least for another 5 years. And he's ruthless in his pursuit for power, both at home and outside. And talking about threats from China, Canada has been rocked by a major scandal. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is under the lens once again. The opposition wants to know if Trudeau got re-elected with China's help.
The revelations that the communist regime in Beijing has targeted for influence and supported Justin Trudeau over a decade are massive.
That's Pierre Poilievre. He's the leader of opposition in Canada, and he's talking about this. Last week, the Trudeau Foundation returned a donation. It was worth 200,000 Canadian dollars. The Trudeau Foundation got it 7 years ago, and this money is potentially linked to China. We are talking about the Pierre Trudeau Foundation here. It was established in the year 2001 to honor Pierre Trudeau, the former Prime Minister of Canada, also Justin Trudeau's father. He was directly involved in the foundation's work from the year 2002 to 2014. Pierre Trudeau. Now, Justin Trudeau became Prime Minister in the year 2015, and this donation was made in the year 2016. Where did the money come from? A man called Zhang Bin, a wealthy Chinese businessman, also said to be an advisor to the Chinese government. Apparently, Zhang was acting on the orders of Beijing. The charge is that the Communist Party ordered Zhang to make that donation to the Trudeau Foundation. And what's the proof? There is none so far. The Trudeau Foundation says it wasn't aware of Zhang's links. Let me quote from a statement that they've released. As an independent, non-partisan charity, ethics and integrity are among our core values, and we cannot keep any donation that may have been sponsored by a foreign government and would not knowingly do so. This is what their statement said as they returned the money, but the statement doesn't really cut it. And the story is not dying, because China did try to meddle in Canada's elections, not once, not twice, but multiple times. The list of charges and allegations is a long one. China secretly funded political campaigns in Canada. 11 candidates who ran in the 2019 election got Chinese money. The money came from China's consulate in Toronto. In 2021, China tried pumping more cash. Undeclared donations were made to political campaigns. International Chinese students were hired, and they were also asked to volunteer full-time in political campaigns. And in the 2019 election, a candidate may have been compromised. Trudeau's party, the Liberals, were even warned about this. That same candidate is now a member of parliament in Canada. His name is Han Dong. Both Trudeau and Han deny these charges.
In a free democracy, it is not up to unelected security officials to dictate to political parties who can or cannot run. That's a really important principle. We, of course, draw on the expertise every step of the way. But the suggestions we've seen in the media that CSIS would somehow say, no, this person can't run or that person can't run, is not just false, it's actually damaging to people's confidence in our democratic and political institutions.
Trudeau was talking about the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, or CSIS here. Apparently, it uncovered these Chinese meddling attempts. Those reports were leaked to the media, and that's how the entire scandal erupted. So has democracy in Canada been compromised? Like I said, no hard evidence so far, but reports say that in all of these cases, China was engaged in covert meddling attempts. The candidates were unaware of Chinese activities in some cases, and Chinese diplomats used proxies to meddle. Now an investigation is underway. It is being led by the Canadian Parliament. But the opposition is not satisfied. They want an independent and public inquiry. And this man complicates the story. His name is Maurice Rosenberg. He's a former civil servant. Rosenberg also served as the Trudeau Foundation's president, and recently he led a review of Canada's election process. Do you know what his report said? That the 2021 election result in Canada was not influenced. Now, to be fair, he's called for a public inquiry into the meddling charges, but Trudeau has been reluctant. He doesn't want a public inquiry. And critics don't trust Rosenberg's conclusions. They say that a man who worked for the Trudeaus cannot be unbiased in his report. So Rosenberg's ties to the Trudeau Foundation discredit his work. Then in November last year, Trudeau had a public spat with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. You may remember this. The two leaders met at the G20 summit in Indonesia. Canada is believed to have raised the meddling charges. The next day, the press reported the details. Apparently, the Chinese did not like that.
Everything we discuss is then leaked to the paper. That's not appropriate. And that's not how the way the conversation was conducted. If there is sincerity on your part,
free and open and frank dialogue, and that is what we will continue to have. We will continue to look to work constructively together, but there will be things we will disagree on, and we will have to continue.
Let's create the conditions first.
Since that day, there's been a steady stream of media reports. All of them cast a shadow of doubt on Justin Trudeau, the Prime Minister, on his victory in the last election and how he has handled this entire affair so far. Apparently, Trudeau was briefed about the meddling, but he's yet to present his version. He keeps questioning what's being reported in the media. He says some of those claims are not right. But if Trudeau has done no wrong, why is he avoiding scrutiny? Why doesn't he share the full story? The silence does not help him. Vantage continues after a short break.
So to trade and raise money and stuff like that. But Indian democracy is a public good. So the surprising thing is that the so-called defenders of democracy, which are the United States, European countries, seem to just be oblivious. If you noticed a statement of the foreign minister, he said China is much more powerful than us.
Meanwhile, in Pakistan, it's been an action-packed weekend. A game of hide-and-seek played out on the streets of Lahore. At the centre of it was former Prime Minister Imran Khan. The Islamabad police reached his doorstep with an arrest warrant. But Imran Khan was nowhere to be found. The police returned empty-handed. Then the drama intensified as Imran Khan's supporters chanted slogans, even engaging in the odd scuffle with the police. Hours later, he came out in public. He met with his supporters at the very same residence. And he says he'll appear for the court hearing this week. But we may not see a lot of him on the Pakistani media because they've refused to air his speeches. The media is now accusing Imran Khan of spreading hate speech. But the cricketer turned politician remains defiant. Here's a report. Imran Khan's residence in Lahore was buzzing on Sunday. The Islamabad police was there to arrest him. All they got was some high-voltage drama. The police ran into a wall of Khan's supporters. They surrounded his residence and protested against his arrest. Reports say the police somehow managed their way in, but the PTI chief was nowhere to be found. He wasn't in his room, so the police had to return empty-handed. Hours later, Imran Khan made a dramatic public appearance. He met with his supporters and amidst loud slogans and applauses, gave a defiant speech.
हम सिर्फ एक अल्लाह के सामने झुकते हैं ना मैं किसी इंसान ना किसी इदारे किसी के सामने मैं ना जिंदगी में झुका हूं और इंशाल्लाह आपको भी कभी झुकने नहीं दूंगा.
It was a busy last week for the former Prime Minister. Imran Khan faces multiple cases. He managed to secure bail in 3 of them on the same day. But no such luck in the Tosha Khana case. Tosha Khana is the state depository that keeps expensive gifts given to Pakistani officials by foreign dignitaries. In 2022, a case was filed to disqualify Imran Khan for life. During his stint as Prime Minister, Khan was gifted expensive items including watches by top officials in the Gulf. But he's said to have taken these items from the depository and then sold them illegally at high profits. Reports also say that he made 36 million rupees from the sale of premium watches alone. For the record, it's compulsory for Pakistani officials to deposit such expensive gifts to the Tosha Khana. Imran Khan has denied any wrongdoing though. He says the information could not be disclosed earlier as it would have hurt relations with their Gulf counterparts. Last Tuesday, an Islamabad Sessions Court issued a non-bailable arrest warrant against him for his continued absence in the hearing. The police say it was only following the law and wanted Khan's custody to ensure his presence at the hearing. The cricketer turned politician, however, remains defiant. He's dismissed the cases against him and wants his security to be beefed up amid threats of assassination.
अदालतों के अंदर कोई सिक्योरिटी नहीं, पता है कि जान को खतरा है और कोई सिक्योरिटी नहीं है, और छोटे छोटे केसेस में कभी किसी अदालत में बुला लें, कभी किसी अदालत में.
It's not just political rivals that Khan is up against now. It's the media too. Hours after he dodged arrest, Pakistan's electronic media watchdog banned channels from airing live and recorded speeches of the ousted Prime Minister. It says Khan made provocative speeches that threaten law and order. The Pakistan Electronic Media Regulatory Authority said it will cancel the licenses of channels that violate this order. For Khan, such a ban is not new. In August last year, the regulator had imposed a similar ban. This was after Imran Khan allegedly threatened judicial officers for arresting a key aide of his. Despite these setbacks, he says he's determined to fight. On the legal front, though, his fate hangs in balance. His lawyers have called for a withdrawal of warrants. They say this will give Imran Khan a fair opportunity. The court has refused to cancel his arrest warrant. Expect more drama this week. The United States has released a report which indicts India, or at least attempts to. What for? For financially supporting Afghan warlords. And remember, this is coming from a country that played a key role in arming the Afghan Mujahideen, that left over $7 billion worth of weapons in Afghanistan in 2021, and that waged a 20-year war on Afghanistan, killing hundreds of thousands of people. The Mujahids they supported went on to become the Taliban. Then the Americans spent 20 years fighting a monster it birthed itself. And now the same America is accusing India of arming the Afghans. The report comes from the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction, or SIGAR, S-I-G-A-R. This is Washington's leading oversight authority on Afghanistan's reconstruction. Again, the irony is too stark to be ignored. The US, trying to reconstruct a country it bombed back to the Stone Ages. The report from SIGAR is called this: Why the Afghan Security Forces Collapsed. This report says India funded Afghan warlords instead of the government in Kabul. It quotes a man called Hibatullah Ali Zai. He is a former Afghan army general and he has a lot to say. Let me quote from what he said. I got a report that said these guys, Noor and Dostam and so on, went to India and got money from India to create a resistance in the north. That is good, but that money should have gone to the Afghan government to pay Afghan National Security Forces' salaries. Now, who are these people he's talking about? Noor and Dostam. Atta Muhammad Noor and Abdul Rashid Dostam, both exiled warlords from Afghanistan, both belong to northern Afghanistan. It is a region which has traditionally resisted the Taliban. Now, these two warlords got whatever they wanted from India. That's what the report says. Let me tell you what else the general has said, and I'm quoting again. I, as a commander, was requesting money for operations and supplies, but I could not get it from the government. He's talking about India. But Dostam got money just from making phone calls to the Indians. There's more. This report also says that the UAE bagged figures like Dostam. The Emiratis reportedly gave 200 brand new land cruisers to the exiled warlord. Neither India nor the UAE have responded to the report yet. But let's look at India's record. What does it say? India's interventions in Afghanistan centered around the people. Let's look at New Delhi's projects. Before the Taliban took power in 2021, India invested over $3 billion in development and capacity building projects. India built the Afghan parliament in Kabul for $90 million. It built the 42-megawatt Salma Dam in the Herat province. India's Border Roads Organization built the 218-kilometer-long Zaranj-Dilaram highway. India has also helped build hospitals, schools and universities in Afghanistan. And that's not all. India gifted hundreds of buses for the Kabul transportation system. It supplied Afghanistan's army with close to 300 military vehicles. Afghanistan's Air Force was provided with Mi-25 and Mi-35 helicopters. And even after the takeover of the Taliban, India's humanitarian assistance continues. It is working to restart 20 development projects. The list is long, but somehow none of it made it to the Cigar report. No mention of the development assistance from India. Just an accusation that India funded anti-Taliban warlords. Even if it did, it won't be new. Even during the Taliban's previous stint in power until 2001, India supported the Northern Alliance along with Russia and Iran. This was the resistance front led by Ahmad Massoud. And India has always had its suspicions about the Taliban, not just because of it being a terror outfit, but also because it's been hand in glove with Pakistan. Even during the 2021 takeover, Pakistan played the mediator. The ISI chief personally flew down to Kabul to oversee government formation. Now, the Taliban are behaving like the Taliban. They're showing that they have a mind of their own, and Pakistan doesn't like it. There are gunfights at the border, threats and warnings. The security situation is precarious. India has stakes in Afghanistan and commitments to the Afghan people. It needs to carefully craft its policy and engagements. As for reports like these, they expose America's flawed approach and double standards more than anything else. In Bangladesh, news of a major mishap. A massive fire broke out yesterday in a Rohingya refugee camp. It destroyed 2,000 shelters and left 12,000 people homeless. It took 3 hours to douse the flames, but by then the damage had been done. And it heaps further misery upon the Rohingya refugees, considered one of the world's most persecuted minorities. The fire took place in the southern area of Cox's Bazar near the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. And fires are an absurdly common occurrence in Rohingya refugee camps. Between January 2021 and December 2022, there were more than 220 fires in these camps, 220 fires. 60 of these were confirmed cases of arson. The stateless Rohingya say these fires are a conspiracy to displace them again. Here's a report.
Clouds of thick black smoke rose from a Rohingya refugee camp in southern Bangladesh. They blotted out the sun, covering the camp in an apocalyptic haze. A massive fire made its way through the Cox's Bazar camp near the Bangladesh-Myanmar border. It's one of the world's largest Rohingya refugee camps. The area houses about 1 million Rohingyas who fled Myanmar. No deaths or injuries have been reported, but the blaze tore through about 2,000 makeshift buildings, leaving some 12,000 refugees without shelter. The refugees shuffled out of the camp as the fire destroyed their homes. Their shelters are often made of bamboo and tarpaulin, which catch fire easily. Over 200 fires have taken place in the camps over the years. The refugees are all too familiar with the routine. They gathered at the edge of the camp, waiting for the fire to subside. Many didn't have the time to save any of their belongings. It took authorities about 3 hours to control the fire. After the flames were doused, the refugees made their way back to the charred remains of their homes. They tried to recover any belongings that hadn't turned to ash. Many found that nothing was left. The Rohingyas are a Muslim-majority group who have lived in northern and eastern Myanmar for centuries. But they aren't recognized as an ethnic group in Myanmar and they are denied citizenship. They've been subjected to attacks for decades. The crisis escalated in 2017 after Myanmar's military started a brutal crackdown that left thousands dead. The military crackdown has been called genocidal and a form of ethnic cleansing. Myanmar has denied these charges. Things have reportedly gotten worse since Myanmar's military coup in 2021. Entire Rohingya villages have been razed and replaced by military installations. The refugees often don't have a home to go back to. Even if they do, Myanmar's junta has refused to allow the refugees to return. Meanwhile, tensions between refugees and locals have been high. Locals accuse the Rohingya of being illegal immigrants and putting a strain on resources. Fires have often been set in refugee camps intentionally. Bangladesh's government reported that out of the 222 fires in the refugee camps between January 2021 and December 2022, at least 60 are confirmed cases of arson. Investigations into the cause of the latest fire are underway. Many say they prefer death to going back. Where the Myanmar military is accused of conducting mass executions and gang rapes on the Rohingya.
Drug kingpin Pablo Escobar is known worldwide for what he smuggled out of Colombia: cocaine. You must already know this. But our next story is about something he smuggled in: cocaine hippos. And no, this is not another cocaine bear scenario. Hippos were part of Escobar's collection of exotic animals. So they're fondly referred to as cocaine hippos. Even 26 years after his death, myths continue to surround the notorious drug lord. But the disastrous impact of these hippo descendants is no myth. Now, Colombia wants to deport some of them. And where will their new home be? India and Mexico. Our next report tells you more.
Hippos are making a splash in Colombia. In the late 1970s, drug lord Pablo Escobar acquired 4 hippopotamuses, 1 male, 3 females. He reportedly got them from Africa. They made a good addition to the private zoo on his estate. When he surrendered to authorities in 1991, the government seized his estate, but they made a mistake. They allowed the animals to roam free. It's been about 30 years since. The original hippos have multiplied. There are over 130 now. These territorial animals aren't native to South America, so they are thriving without natural predators and devouring plant life. They're taking over, not leaving much space for native animals. They're polluting soil and water, also threatening people. Hippos are big and deadly. They're among the world's most dangerous animals. They're capable of killing a human with a single bite. Numbers say they're responsible for about 500 deaths each year. They've been called an invasive species in Colombia. By 2040, their population could reach 600 if left alone. And that's the last thing the government wants to do. They've been looking for solutions for decades now. There have been debates on whether to kill them or conserve them. Castrations and shots of contraceptive darts have been used, but it has had limited success. Now the government says it has another solution. It will transfer about half of these hippos to natural sanctuaries in India and Mexico. 60 will go to India and another 10 to Mexico. The technical term for this is translocating. It involves moving the hippos from one country to another, but neither of these countries can be the native habitat. So why are they being translocated? Why couldn't they have just been sent to Africa? It would have done more harm than good. When animals or plants are moved from one place to the other, their bacteria and viruses move along with them. So this would mean bringing new diseases to Africa for both hippos and other animals. Africa's ecosystem has not evolved to handle that. Colombia says India and Mexico have the capacity to receive them. The countries will be able to home them properly and control their reproduction. But it will not be cheap. It will cost Mexico $400,000 and India $900,000. Ecuador, the Philippines and Botswana are lining up for future shipments. In India, Gujarat will receive these cocaine hippos. These are not the only wild animal guests coming to India. It recently received cheetahs from Namibia. This was part of a reintroduction project. The translocation could be completed by the first half of this year. The translocation of hippos is being hailed as a humane approach. Hopefully, it will be.
Our next story today is about a smoldering public health crisis, obesity. It's not just a health epidemic, it's also an economic time bomb. And this concerns all of us. Half of the world is on track to be overweight or obese by 2035. Half of the world. So who will be the most affected? And can anything be done to stop this? We'll get to that, but first, what is obesity? Obese is a medical term. It is used to describe a person with high body fat, and it's not the same as being overweight. If you have a body mass index or BMI of 25, you're overweight. If your BMI is 30 or above, you're obese. Obesity causes health problems. It increases the risk of cancer, heart disease, and diabetes, among others. And why are we talking about it tonight? Because a recent report has raised concerns. It has been published by the World Obesity Federation. It warns that more than half of the world's population will be overweight or obese by 2035. Now, to put this in numbers, 38% of the world population, about 2.6 billion people, are already overweight or obese. 2.6 billion people. But in 12 years' time, this will increase to 51%. That's more than 4 billion people obese. Do you know what's even more worrying? Obesity rates are rising fastest among children and adolescents. By 2035, it could be double the rate seen in 2020. It's expected to rise by 100% among boys under 18. This will affect 208 million boys. And it's worse for girls. The rise of 125% is predicted, affecting 175 million girls. And obesity is not just a health concern, it has a real economic cost. So the global cost of obesity is also set to shoot up from about $2 trillion in 2019 to more than $4 trillion in 2035. That's how much obesity will cost the world. This would be about 3% of the global GDP. And the world's poorest countries will be the worst hit. They will see the sharpest rise in obesity, especially low and middle income nations in Africa and Asia. They're going to be the worst hit, and they're the least prepared to confront it. We're talking about countries like Niger, Papua New Guinea, Somalia, Nigeria, and Central African Republic. And which are the countries that are the best prepared to deal with obesity? Rich European nations like Switzerland, Norway, Finland, Iceland, and Sweden. And let me explain why. What is the relationship between obesity and poverty? Fast food. Fast food joints are more common in poor neighborhoods. Studies say people with a certain level of education tend to focus more on fitness, and this is a global trend. Either the poor are starving or they rely on junk. Those who have money and education have access to healthier food. So how do we fix it? As individuals, we can keep our weight in check with regular exercise and a balanced diet. You already know that, so I'll not dwell on it. But this is not just about individual willpower and lifestyle. Obesity today is a policy issue. Solving obesity is the same as solving inequalities. Governments have to step in and take decisive action. Experts say increasing taxes on unhealthy food is going to help. Ban junk food ads during certain hours of the day. Put warnings on food packets. Provide healthy meals at schools. Before the problem becomes too big to ignore. 1 in 7 people is obese today. This could become 1 in 4 by 2035. And a decade may not be enough to reverse this. And now let's look at Japan, while we still can, apparently. Because the way they're going, the country might disappear. That's what an aide of the Japanese Prime Minister has said. She said Japan is disappearing because of its population crisis. The country has announced a record low number of births in 2022. It was just half the number of deaths last year. Japan's population shrunk by about 8 lakh people, 800,000. It's both shrinking and aging. The country is heading towards an economic catastrophe. The government plans major policy initiatives. Their budget to revive the population is more than their record high defense budget, and that should tell you something about how critical the situation is. Here's a report.
Japan's population is declining. But that's not the news. It's the rate at which it's declining that's making headlines. Japan recently published data showing that the births in 2022 were less than 800,000. It's a level Japan wasn't supposed to reach till 2030. And the births amounted to half of the deaths last year. This means Japan's population shrunk by about 800,000. It has caused an aide to the Japanese Prime Minister to declare that the country may disappear. In recent weeks, the population crisis has been on everyone's mind. Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has said that the time to address the crisis was now or never. He has vowed to double the expenditure on children and families. A new government agency to focus on the crisis will be set up in April. First, let's look at the numbers. The births last year fell below 800,000. This is the lowest since data collection started in 1899. For context, births in the 1970s were over 2 million. The fertility rate has fallen to 1.3, far below the 2.1 needed for a stable population. Both the birth rate and the population have been declining for years now. Researchers say the population could fall to as low as 53 million by the end of the century. Why is this happening? Firstly, raising a child is expensive, especially in Japan where childcare costs have increased, but the economy has mostly been stagnant since the early 1990s. Wages have gone down in Japan in real terms. Then there's urbanization. Cities have limited space and a lack of childcare support. Another factor is Japan's rejection of immigrants. Countries like Canada and Australia encourage immigration to bolster their workforce. But Japan has historically been averse to migrants. It has struck a blow to Japan's demography. But why is Japan's population crisis so acute? After all, neighboring nations like China and South Korea, and even many Western countries, have low birth rates. China even saw its population decline last year, for the first time since the 1960s. The difference lies in Japan's demography. It is the second oldest nation in the world after tiny Monaco. About 29% of its population is 65 or above. The average age in Japan is about 49, and it keeps increasing. It's this impending demography, an abundance of the old and a dearth of the young, which is poised to destroy Japan's economy. The government's plans so far have been criticized as short-sighted. They involve tax breaks for families or proposals like student loan waivers to working women with children. These policies fail to incentivize having big families outside urban areas. The government has also been called ridiculous, like when a lawmaker recently suggested that the lack of children isn't due to the high cost of living in Japan, but because young people aren't good lovers. He suggested carrying out a survey to determine the citizens' romantic ability. But the lawmaker also hinted that Japan's conservative society, where romance before marriage is taboo, might be a problem. Whatever the reasons, Japan's population situation is dire. Researchers say this decade is crucial in getting Japan back on track. The government needs to focus all its energies into bringing about a baby boom. If not, Japan could be headed to a long grey twilight before the nation disappears.
And finally, it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. We're starting with India. International Women's Day is around the corner. The Indian Army released a video of Shiva Chauhan, the first female officer to have been deployed on the world's highest battlefield, the Siachen Glacier. In Israel, protests continue for the 9th straight week against the government's reform plan. In Mexico, children formed a giant lily using tin cans to promote recycling. Mexicans also celebrated an annual fireworks festival. And finally, a Syrian boy who survived earthquakes last month expressed his desire to meet his role model, Cristiano Ronaldo. And his dream came true. We're leaving you with these images. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Engaging in unethical behavior, making false assertions and erroneous declarations. The poll body barred Imran Khan from holding public office for a period of 5 years for these errors of omission and commission. But news of Imran Khan's disqualification did not go down well with his supporters. Soon after the announcement, huge protests led by PTI workers broke out in front of the Election Commission offices across the country. Multiple instances of vandalism were reported during these demonstrations, and protesters clashed with the police. A case of terrorism was then registered against Imran Khan, alleging that the PTI leadership had encouraged these protests after the Election Commission disqualified him in the Toshakhana case. Khan has filed for interim bail, claiming that the case against him is a result of political victimization. So whether or not this ups Imran Khan's stock politically in Pakistan, and whether or not this will help him come the general elections later this year, that is something to wait and watch for. And also, in the run-up to that, will the government under Shahbaz Sharif actually bite the bullet and arrest Imran Khan, or will it risk making him a political martyr? The police landed up at Imran Khan's residence in Lahore. They had an arrest warrant on them that was issued after he failed to appear before an anti-corruption court on the 28th of February. But when the police arrived at Zaman Park, they faced hordes of angry supporters of Imran's party, the Tehreek-e-Insaf. These PTI workers were reportedly carrying clubs and raising slogans in support of Imran Khan. The cops spent an hour at Khan's premises without encountering him. In fact, instead, they spoke to Khan's chief of staff, who assured them that they will comply with all the legal processes required. And then, lo and behold, hours after the police left his home, Imran Khan made an appearance. He addressed a press conference. He claimed that he has never bowed down before any man or institution. He also alleged that there was a serious threat to his life and that he was being dragged to the court in fake cases because there is a plot to kill him while on the way. Remember, Imran Khan was shot on the leg at a political rally in Wazirabad in November last year.
ना मैं किसी इंसान ना किसी इदारे किसी के सामने मैं ना जिंदगी में झुका हूं और इंशाल्लाह आपको भी कभी झुकने नहीं दूंगा। ये याद रखें कि जिधर पाकिस्तान को ये चोर और डाकू
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jamwal. Breaking news coming in from the state of Rajasthan. After the Pulwama widows were manhandled by the Rajasthan police, what we are learning is that Congress leader Sachin Pilot has written a letter to Chief Minister Ashok Gehlot demanding an inquiry into the misbehavior of the police. Pilot has also demanded the relaxation of rules for giving government jobs to the families of the martyrs and fulfilling